guys ready, or you need a second?
I am always ready to talk nostalgia.
I've just strained a muscle in my back.
Oh, so you're not going
awesome.
anywhere then?
And welcome into the Big Book Podcast for Stardate Unknown. You're traveling through another dimension, a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. That's the signpost up ahead. You're next up, the Big Book Podcast Clip Show. Now, hold on, don't turn off your radios yet. This is going to be quite possibly the only acceptable clip show in media history. I'm Andrew, also known as Automaton 2000. Joining me is the master of mirth, the Boom Boom LaSalle of Yoo-Hoo Drinkers. Welcome to the show, Jared, a.k.a. BigMcLargeHuge. Jared, you've been away from the game for quite a while now, on to bigger and better things. How often do you have the inescapable urge to tier things in your daily life?
I think it's something that you're born with. So it's something that just, tier the different sides at my dinner, that's it happens. It's just part of me.
You were molded by it. We didn't even tier until we were young men, but
yeah.
I'm sorry, I just butchered that Batman reference, by the way.
Yeah,
it's fine, don't worry. Tom Hardy butchered it before you got to it.
Also joining us, the growth hormone Gimli of the Upper East Side, the Richard Cox Season 3 terrorist, the Dutch angle in the tapestry of my life. Welcome, Finn, a.k.a. Stars and Garters. Oh, very clever, Finn. Eat any good books lately?
I don't read books anymore. I only read comic books. They are a lower form of literature. They go down easier. They are more easily digestible.
I
had a lot of problems.
We need to get together and read some comics. I've been asking for a little while now, so...
You know what? I could think of some good stuff. But we're not here to talk about comic books. We're here to talk about big books.
Well, we are kind of here to talk about comic. We're here to talk about whatever you guys want. So yeah, we're going to take a bit of a departure from standard this episode. This was recorded sometime before you're going to be hearing it, but fear not, we have all the stats and breakdown you need for these new crew. This month's mega recurring is a Tier 3 Commandip Psi, Voyage rank 25 with 2 to 4 collections. This month's subjective event giveaway is a Tier 3 Commandip Sec Crew, rank 40 on Voyages with 2 to 4 collections. This week's event crew is a Tier 4 Commandip Eng Voyage rank 60 with 2 to 4 collections. Fellas, how's your Commandip roster looking these days?
Well, to quote the philosopher David Byrne, it's the same as it ever was. Because
as it ever was.
Yeah, that's part of why I kind of got out of it, is just that it just felt very repetitive and with different art, but we don't want to throw too much sand right from the get-go.
I don't know, if you don't want to throw sand, I'll throw sand. Like it is a case of I bet you I could reinstall timelines on my phone right now, boot up my roster, and I would be looking at it and go, yeah, that was about what my roster was like last time I played. That was around about the same places. I had those pieces and they excited me momentarily, and then I went off to do something that was a little bit more thrilling.
And you still wouldn't put Captain Praxton on a voyage.
Never. Fuck that guy. He's such an asshole. He's an asshole.
I
do my best. I
almost want to let the secret slip, Stars, that you and I have, but I'm going to keep that one to my grave. But you know what it is. Yeah, I was actually looking this up for another BB pod we're going to be doing soon. They're a year apart. There's a giveaway crew and a mega recurring crew. They're both Commandip something, and they're 0.02% apart in Voyage score. I'm like, this is so pointless, And well, okay, let's go in the Wayback Machine back to what was that? Early 2018. That's when I started. Big. I know you started. What? You were there when the game started, right? 2016.
Not quite at launch, but I think maybe 2 months after the game launched. Yeah.
And Stars, you were what, 2018?
I believe 2018, 2019. Yeah, because I think it was just after Discovery Season 1 had finished, I believe that was, because I think that was still... I came in right after the Discovery Meg had finished, I believe. And I think we're in the TNG Mirror Mega, which I believe came right after it. So that was right about when I got in.
Yeah, I think it was the end of 2017. I remember there being no great player resources. There was a Voyage calc, and then there was a level 100 spreadsheet that was pretty bare bones. I don't think there were Voyage triplets or anything bespoke, really.
I think there was the Dunok Airlock sheet as well, but I don't think it was really very well maintained.
Voyages weren't even a thing for quite a long way into the game, so
So
or
how did
what
you
felt
guys
like a
grope
long way
in the
into the game at that
darkness then, as you were trying to figure out which crew were good for your rosters?
Well, I will tell you that at the very beginning, the very first gold behold that I ever got,
Oh
I
no,
took
I know this
I
one.
took I took Judge Q because he was, oh, well, he's the face of the game, so he must be good, right? He's not good. He was never good.
He was never good.
So yeah, and then my second gold behold, I took Enterprise E Picard, because it's like, oh, it's Picard. Oh, I love Picard. That he's got to be good too. Also not good. So yeah, it was just fumbling towards ignorance and just doing the best you could. And because early on it was about completing the away missions and stuff like that, there weren't a whole lot of things to do. So, maximizing the power of your crew was not the top priority way back then, really. So it didn't really click in until they started introducing things like voyages that stuff really started to matter.
Yeah, no, I think Voyages and Gauntlet were both 2017. So, Finn, by the time you joined, by the time I joined, they had those. But there weren't really great resources to tell you, like BigBook.app, to tell you which crew to use where. I mean, what kind of decisions were you making? What kind of behold or roster decisions do still haunt your dreams?
It was all based on, I like that character over this character. It was a lot of purely going by affection, which, to be fair, I think was a kind of an ethos that I carried with me throughout the entire game. I don't remember any particularly scarring ones, but I know for a fact there must have been really good crew that I must have skipped over. There must have been like a few good Gauntlet crew, or probably one or two really top like Voyages that I was like, they'll come around again, but I really like the look of that crew, and it was probably real fucking garbage. Like, it's always the way. I think I had some vague intonation of, well, this crew has 3 skills, so they must be better. And that's generally true, but at some point I ended up with an ambassador like Oksana Troy, so clearly I didn't hold to that ethos completely.
Did you get a chance to use her in her 65% Gauntlet, or is that just like the reason you took her and then you never did? Okay.
I did use her a few times, and she was okay. She was firmly okay. She beat Mambo Picard a good few times, which I feel like is both appropriate for like in and out of universe. I feel like that is appropriate. Troy beats Picard every time.
So there's some schmuck that rolled in with his Judge Q, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna crush this guy in Gauntlet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that we're calling anyone out by name on the podcast. All right, so I had 2 formative moments early on. One, there was actually, it wasn't quite it was sort of a tier list. Someone had written a letter grade post on the old Disruptor Beam forums, which had been replaced twice now at this point. And he had given Commander Uhura, the 2-skill 4-star with bases like 500 or something, he gave him like an A because she was easy to equip. And so I had to behold him like, oh, well, an A grade's pretty good. Or maybe it was even S tier or something. So I picked her, never used her once. And her event came around, she was big bonus in a galaxy, so like 10x bonus. Didn't even use her once then. So that, like, I'm like, oh, I know I can do better. I got it. Someone's got to do better than that. And the other one, and Stars are going to hate me for this.
What you're saying is that Uhura should be hauled away as
garbage. The other one, Stars, you won't be happy, but I had to choose between Musketeer LaForge, who I love his art. Great art, big floppy hat. He had Gauntlet ability back then. He had a little bit of Voyage ability. Or Protomorphos's Worf, who was a 2-skiller. And, you don't need too many of those. I don't think he even had a collection back then. But the people in my fleet were like, big base, you got to take the big base. You got to take Worf. So I took Worf, and I regretted it so bad. I'm like, why does big base matter? I have all these crew for shell. So, yeah, I tried to set out to do something a little bit better than that because I get sucked in. I get obsessed when I start doing something like this. I started reading all the material. All these people posting like behold choices on Reddit. I'm like, well, which one really is better? I'd look up all the stats. We even started making up our own like metrics to try to figure out these crew. And I would wake up, how obsessive it is. I'd wake up at like 3, roll over to send out my shuttles, and I'd see someone have like a behold post. I'm like, oh, I gotta help. I know this girl. I'll help him out. And I go to bed like an hour and a half later, and I had to get up for work. I'm like, this is so stupid. I'm gonna sit down. I'm gonna write it all out into some kind of large tome of behold advice. And I soon realized that was not tenable long term. So and this is where you guys enter the picture, because I like to think of myself, this is the X-Men reference for you, Finn. I like to think of myself as the Charles Xavier of the group. I sit in my chair and I touch my head a lot, but I also see things in people. And I saw things in you. Finn, you were writing these huge soliloquies for mega events, like listing every possible bonus crew and what they had for lunch.
I remember that, yeah.
And Jared, when I saw your post, I'm like, oh, this dude is probably smarter than me. I should ask him to join in on the big book. So, if you remember back then, when I asked you, if you had any inkling of helping or working on that kind of resource, what was it that you enjoyed about it? Was it the creative writing outlet? Was it the numbers stuff?
For me personally, I remember, because I've always liked getting into the. I grew up with a copy of the Star Trek Encyclopedia as a Christmas gift. That was like one of my gateways into caring about the nitty gritty and the trivia of Star Trek. So like going into the nitty gritty of like stats and stuff like is kind of a natural outgrowth of that. But it's also a case of I just enjoyed writing about crew, and I enjoyed writing funny jokes. Like that's always been something I've enjoyed, is just trying to make people laugh. And I think I recall one of the first notes I ever wrote was for Section 31 Georgiou, if I recall, like the little the 4-star super rare from Discovery Season 2. And I remember writing a line about calling a Colonel Wayland, and this was back in the day when we still had hyperlinks, and I fucking to this day
Dude.
miss having hyperlinks, because so many jokes land so much better if I can just link you to the clip or the moment. And like, man, but when we had to get rid of the Google Doc and we had to move over, I was so upset because there were so many good jokes in there that we had to rewrite. But yeah, I remember like putting that in, and I think you annotated it, because I used to submit all my notes to you for approval before we put them into the thing, because we were still
were we ever that young?
Yeah, I know, right? Oh no, we were younger. And I think I remember you just writing, "Oh yes, Bond reference. You're fitting well." It's like I think it all kind of snowballed from there.
Well, so my time starting with the book was actually when you were looking to step away from it for a while, or indefinitely, and
which has happened about 7 times to this point for reference. So
yeah, so I saw the utility of the resource, and I really enjoyed it. I used it all the time, and I felt that it needed to continue in some form, and if I could do that, then I would be doing a service and kind of repaying the value that I had taken from it just as a player. So we talked to each other behind the scenes, and you kind of gave me the run through of how to do it. And also, like Finn says, I enjoy writing jokes. I enjoy writing,
pretty damn good at them too.
Yeah, like references and things like that, and that appeals to me. And I just liked the style of the whole thing, and I felt like I could fit in to that style to some degree. And then we had talked to each other for the first time, and it wasn't just text over Reddit anymore, or what have you.
It was tender caresses and long stares at each other across vast distances.
Well, and then naturally,
what do you think
the
about
very
these
first
killers while we caress each other? Yeah.
And naturally, the very first thing that I ever wrote was the note for Fury Kess, referencing future sweaty puberty Kess. So I guess that rubbed off,
so to speak.
Yeah.
So see, that's the thing, because like we'll go back sometimes and look at notes, and none of us know who wrote it, because we all like our joke style, our writing style to some degree is kind of like melded to where like I don't know who wrote this, but I crack up laughing at some of these, and that's always a treat.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's like you never quite realize how good your comedic chemistry is going to be until you start picking out over the notes and working out, okay, when you try and suss out who is it, because there's certain jokes that I'll make that you won't make. There are certain jokes you'll make that I won't make, because like cultural divide and all. And then there are those ones where it's like, okay, that's inside of enough of a Trek reference that could be any of us.
Yeah, I usually have to go by the British spelling to see if it's a Finn note or if it's a me note.
But then Idle got involved, and that made it even messier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the hyperlink era is probably my favorite. I think, in all respect to Alex, who came along, Captain Idle, and helped sort of modernize the stats part of things, and then to who I will have redacted post-edit, but you know him as No Name Namer, and he took it again to another level. But like we talked about early on, it doesn't really matter. Like, especially nowadays, these crew are like 1% better than the other, and if you take your favorite every time, you're gonna probably have a better time than trying to chase crew and being upset that the WRG doesn't release the stats or the power that you want. So, yeah, early on it was more about educating myself than it was everyone else. And so to do that, like before it launched originally as a Reddit post, I was putting in like 6-7 hour days, either after work or on the weekends, just writing and researching and stuff. And you got to break it up somehow. You got to do jokes. You got to do dumb references. I think one of our favorites to this day is Maki Eddington's note says 3 traits, 2 skills, 1 airlock, and that's like all you need to know about some of these crew.
Yeah.
And then like you mentioned, Bond. I mean, we Finn and I would, during skirmish events, we'd watch James Bond, and sometimes we'd talk about crew or this and that. But what comes next is very unhealthy, and that. That was like the 4 to 5 hour tiering sessions we would do. This is before the algorithm took hold. We'd get on call, and really, this is an extension of things we'll talk about.
We also have to put things into context because people are so used to there being 10 tiers. For those of you who know the before times, that did not used to be the case. There used to be 15 of these fuckers.
Yes.
15 tiers.
Which in some respects made the decisions easier because you had more places to slot crew and you could make smaller tiers. But
it also made it so much more persnickety because it's like, is this piece of trash a tier 14 piece of trash or a tier 13 piece of trash? And it's like, my guy, they're all trash in the end.
Yeah.
It's funny though, because when Cab Tools, I think when they launched, it might still be the case. They have they go up to like 14 point something. And so it just happens that, we were like 14 tiers for a while, and they're at a 14-point system. So maybe there's some inkling that, like, okay, this is there's about 14 degrees of difference between this crew. But then again, it's all made up. The points don't matter. But these tiering sessions, they were really just an excuse for 2 adult men to spend time together, I think. And
or more at times, yeah.
Now, Jared, I think, well, because you're a father of 4.
Yes.
We couldn't steal you away for those. How many of those did you sit in on?
Probably 3, 4, 5, maybe at the most. It would be like some random Saturday that we just decide, or you'd put out the bat signal and it's like, all right, everybody get here at this time, and that's also when we were bringing on other people to try and write notes and pick things up because we were just not able to do it as timely as we wanted to do it at the time. So that just led itself to larger groups, although that made for chaos in a just an audio only Discord situation. So yeah.
Alone.
So I know, Big, you were, I don't know if you still are, a fantasy football guy. And that's another avenue where I would just, destroy my life, spending hours and hours, like, going over all the stats and all the trends and stuff. Was that part of your fantasy football life, or were you a little more casual in that realm?
I used to take it very, very, very seriously. And, yeah, that skill set translates directly to what we do over here, because yes, I would get into matchups and projections and all of these kind of things to where you're like streaming defenses and stuff like that and dropping and adding players every week, and so finding the value is a really important part of fantasy sports in general. And yeah, so that's exactly what the big book was always intended to be, was about finding the value in the things that you have. So
by the way, for the uninitiated, defense in fantasy football is kind of like arena. You only look at it after you've got your wide receivers and running backs and voyages and gauntlet set. It's kind of like the afterthought sort of thing, but
or your non-tank shuttles, I guess.
So the British shaking his head. He's like, "What is this? What is this foosball you're talking about?"
Yeah.
All right.
Where you don't ever use your
Bring
feet.
it down to me in X-Men terms. That'll be easy for me to understand.
All right. So I have to ask you guys an honest question here. I mean, I'm looking for an honest response. Do you still get the? I don't think you guys have written for about a year, I would say. Do you still get the itch sometimes to just sit down and creative write about Star Trek characters?
This is kind of an unfair question because I do a tabletop for you guys every now and then when I find time. So yes, I do.
So the way that I would always describe me and writing is I am always glad to have written, but I hate writing. Because it is such a, it feels like such a painful process for me to get through, and also lend itself to more than a few pings of, hey, you know, are you going to have this note done in time for before the entire event is over?
Was I a slave driver?
Kind of thing. No, it was hard for me to make deadlines sometimes, which is why it is ever more hilarious in retrospect that I tried to have a career in journalism. But yeah, so it's a big undertaking for me to write anything, even if it's just, you know, a couple of hundred words on something. So I have to really, really, really want to do it to actually start. So no, I don't do any just casual writing of really any kind.
Yeah, I think for me it's kind of the opposite, where sometimes I have the urge, like I need to get it out of me, I need to let it flow out of me. But then at the end I'm like, oh, I just wasted 2 hours of my life writing for this thing that no one will read. And so, yeah, it's funny because what really kept us going, like, you know, we weren't on the payroll. I've been in the red for 5.5 years.
Despite many accusations that we were throughout the years.
God,
yeah.
I would love to have been on the payroll. Like, good fucking God. I work a minimum wage retail job. Do you think I'm on if I were on a corporate payroll, I wouldn't be screaming to God about how happy I am? I'm not that good at keeping a secret.
Yeah, I actually looked into fantasy football writing at one point too, because I was investing so much time and I enjoyed writing. And I thought, you know, if I'm going to be writing anyway, I may as well get something out of it. But no, that wasn't quite the case. So yeah, the two things that kept us going, you know, was the little bit of feedback we'd get here and there. People would DM me or drop by in a thread or something and say, you know, they really appreciate it. And every single one was like, okay, my day's better now. And the other one, you know, was just spending time with like-minded people who enjoyed the same things, who could help you grow, you know, like the Charles Xavier crack. I like recruiting people who I see out in the wild in timelines who are like, okay, this guy's smart. He gets it. He's making comments that help other people. Maybe he said one or two things that I disagree with. Good. We need that feedback then on the team. We need someone to help freshen our viewpoint and that kind of thing. So I'm glad you guys were recruitable at the time.
Definitely kind of a right place at the right time. Or yeah, just I don't think that a year before or a year after things would have lined up the way that they did. But I am so glad that they did, because I think I'm a better person for having.
All right, don't lay it on too thick. All right, I don't think we were that formative in the journey of your life, but I appreciate the compliment.
No, you don't understand. The hierarchy goes wife, big book, kids.
Dude, all right. So we actually this was for one of our streams. I think it was in like a Star Trek episode review. I don't think it was a Timelines Talks. But Big is in his car. He brings his microphone out to his car, and he's out there recording just to get like a moment of peace from the family. That's how dedicated this guy is.
I think. Yeah.
And then, as soon as we hit stop recording, his wife comes out and he's like, "All right, yeah, that's enough. You got to come do something." So, this man is dedicated to the
bit. Commitment.
Yeah.
For real. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right with saying right place, right time, because I think about the way that my life has turned out in the last few years, and I think, maybe barring the pandemic, which obviously opened up other avenues for us, like there was no other time in my life that I really would have had both the time, the inclination, and the just like the need to be more sociable. Like in the sort of the grand scheme of my life, there's a few things that have really helped me open up and get over, kind of. I think most people have a degree of anxiety about sociability, but working in retail did a big bit of part of it. But I think also will probably attest to the fact that I didn't even want to be on voice call or on video call for the longest time. You brought up the idea of doing a podcast, and I was like, nah, that's not for me. I haven't got the confidence to do that. And now I do it every week. So maybe it's not one of the most formative parts of my life, but it certainly has helped me in a great way. And I've made friends that I'm going to carry for the rest of my life. I've been to another country I'd never been to because of it. Like, it's one of those things where you really do have to look back at the weird little coincidences of your life. You think, if I hadn't commented on those stray threads of who should I pick in this behold, and we hadn't crossed paths, what would my life look like? And I think it would be substantially poorer.
So, folks out there in TV land, imagine trying to tier 700 crew one at a time, where you have to type out your argument to the other person to try to convince them that this should be, no, this is tier 11, this is not tier 10, there's a clear distinction. Why don't we jump on call, save some time? Nope, can't do that. Got to type out these 4 paragraphs and then hit enter. That was our life for a little while. So, yeah, I guess it was formative after all. Big, forget what I said.
Yeah.
That's what I benefited, and that's the important part.
Yeah. And it just was kind of reaffirming that, the being the person that you are can, mean something to other people, and not just, the other people in your house or something like that. I think that's always a good message to take away from any kind of a situation like this, that just the things that you like, other people can like too, and it's, that's always a good thing. So
there's strength in numbers.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a look back at Bill Gates starting Microsoft in his garage kind of thing, minus the success aspect. Because, over the years it has grown. A shout out to all the guys that we haven't mentioned yet, the newer era of crew, Captain Idle and Nifty and Genos and Frank and Namer and DC Pilot and Ain't Ever Lucky. And we've had Garrick, several other people over the years who've pitched in one way or the other. And so it's gotten more stats focused, and it's got more algorithm focused. We even had WRG contacted me at one point. He's like, hey, can we get your tiers in spreadsheet form so we can take a look at them? And, so if you ever wonder why they pump out crew like tier 3, 4 like clockwork, they have, an area to hit. And, good on them. They're looking at player tools to try to see, okay, how can we extract the maximum value? How can we keep them on the hamster wheel? And so I guess, the three of us to some extent have fallen off the wheel over the years, over the months. But, the friendship has endured, and that's really kind of the heart of why we're doing this podcast, why we did the resource. Obviously we don't get much from it. I know Big has to get to Jeopardy and back to his family. One other topic before we wrap up. This is going to be a shorter one. I want to ask you guys about Fake Crew. Timelines Talks Originals, we called them. Stars, that was your big thing. Big, I don't know how much you got into it, but how much fun is that? Like, because I still do that. When I'm watching TV, I'll watch a Star Trek episode. I'm like, I don't think we have that crew in game. I'll do he's probably Med Command, Psi. Would he be more gauntletty? What kind of traits would I give him? Does that part of your brain still linger, still itch?
Well, It's almost entirely a Stars question there.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does still fire off. Like, not as much as it used to, where I would literally just like have my big pages document full of X, Y, Z, and then I would just usually go name, episode, skill set, and then I would fill in the rest later. But you know, I was watching Picard season 3, episode 1, and I saw Beverly with that freaking phaser rifle. I'm like, yeah, that's MedSec Command right there. It's like, that's an easy one. And then in the back of your mind, you're always like, man, I'd make her like a tier 1 with like a really good gauntlet ability. And then in the back of your mind, you're like, but they're gonna make her like a dipset med if you're fucking lucky, you asshole. You don't give them too much credit.
So I will say that I think the gratifying part, the most gratifying part, in a way, is when you would see the crew actually pop up in the game later. But at the same time, you thinking in the back of your head, mine was better. It's like if I
recall, yeah, no, I did that. I had that happen with Prophet Kira Nerys. I came up with this really cool sec psi thing, and then this, Dip Command Sec. Yeah. And I was like, you guys, come on, please. Why you gotta do this?
We will still never forgive Suspiria. It's just
don't have a flashbacks. Why would you ever say that name?
That episode of Voyager is forever ruined now.
Dude,
it's getting harder and harder to do.
She's telekinetically abused, slaughtered members of Voyager. They're hanging from the ceiling with blood dripping down. They're like, this crew needs diplomacy. That's what she needs as a skill.
Yeah.
And then we have to tier.
It's a primary skill.
It's so gross. And then we have to tier these crew and pretend like they actually mean something. Oh
yeah, and that was the other thing too, is that when we started the Timelines talks, and then you have to say something, like actually say something live on a stream about every new crew that comes out, and you run out of ways, and it just stops being fun to say, well, this crew sucks, that crew sucks, or this crew is pretty good, oh, that crew's good. And having to come up with new, like, I understand better about, sports commentators having to talk about the same players on the same teams over and over and over again, and having to find new takes, as they would say, because we would have to do that all the time too.
Up the middle for a 3-yard gain, 2nd and 7.
Yeah, 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
What's 3 yards in a cloud of dust? Is that that weird little hologram guy that was absolute trash? I forget which one his name was. Oh god, I'm gonna remember it in like 3 hours time.
Dejarin? The Voyager guy?
No, I remember Dejarin. I think I remember him being okay, but I remember you savaging him. I feel like.
Oh well, I mean, there was plenty of savagery to go around over the years.
Yeah. I know there's plenty of crew that we took, because it was always the fun thing of like getting up to do the stream, looking through the crew, and then you just kind of look at them, and you remember what the stats again, and you click over and you go, oh, that's trash.
Yeah.
Like eventually you got to the point where you had automated your eyes to the point where you would see the stats popping. Like, oh, that's trash. That's gonna be pointless to talk about on the show.
Yeah. Because we're getting so morose. All right. I lied. One more question before we end it. We got to answer honestly again. We used to joke about this. I don't know if anyone actually did it. Did you ever either tier or write a note for crew a little less praiseworthy, hoping like 3 more people wouldn't event for them that week, so you'd have a better chance at getting that crew in the event? Did you ever do that, or are you honest right down the line?
I know that we put stuff in notes saying that we should do that. Like, it was actually in the text. It's like, we should talk down this crew so we have a better chance of getting them ourselves.
It's like Odo accusing himself of murder in that early season episode where he's like, only a changeling could have done this.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things where we constantly made jokes about it, and I feel like maybe there were probably a few people who suspected that we did, but like, no, we were all way too nerdy and way too honest to ever actually do it. It was way too much of a, guess what? Truly unique and interesting and good crew only come over so often. If I undersell them to you, I'm doing a disservice to you, I'm doing a disservice to game, but most of all, I'm disgracing the uniform. And that was not something that we did. That's not what we were about. Even though I'm sure I must have lost myself 300, 400, 500 places on a crew I really wanted at some point as a result.
So as Star says, we are the Wesley Crusher of the piece. We're in Starfleet. We don't lie. We're in Big Book. We don't lie.
No, you said that line too well. You're going to have to do that again.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
We're in Starfleet. We don't lie.
All right, so
There you go. Yeah, that's the right amount of anesthetized.
this 30-minute pod has been this long and this thick, but we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, Finn. Thank you, Jared, for joining me.
Always.
The moral of this 30-minute Star Trek episode is, play for your friends, play for the characters, don't play for the stats, even though that might put Big Book out of business. But if you want to go ahead and flaunt that advice, go over to bigbook.app and look at the stats, yada, yada, yada. Anything to add, fellas?
Invest in wolves. They're always a good commodity.
There's always another opportunity to check one off the list.
Wait, hold on. Where is it? Okay.
There you go. That's exactly the kind of delayed rim shot that earned.
Yeah.
Love you, Big.
Thanks.